Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Di, and today I'm sharing with you my diary entry for the week of June 19th through 25th. It is Saturday, June 25th, and I have a little bit of reading to talk to you about. I've got some knitting to share with you and some movie watching. Well, not necessarily movie watching, but TV show watching. And so, yeah, let's get into it. So I'll start with what I've read this week, and then we'll talk about what I'm currently in the middle of. So first off, we finished Death Note. So this is the all-in-one edition. This is the edition that I own. But what we actually read this week was the 6th edition of the Black edition, which is volumes 11 and 12, I believe. So I had not read through Death Note before, but I had watched the anime, and I do have to say that the further along I got into this series, the more tiresome it became for me to read it. The panels in this manga, as we get closer to the end, just became so crowded with text that it was very hard to appreciate this work as a manga. It would have been much better if they didn't have so much text in there, or the illustrations that went along with the panels that had text were more simple. I do feel like because of the amount of text that was in the panels, that there was so much of the illustration being covered up, even though that may not have been important to see. I just feel like it was a waste. I mean, I have to believe that the entire panel was pretty much illustrated. And I know that as far as Japanese characters and English letters go, Japanese characters probably take up a lot less space than the amount of letters needed to convey the same message in English. And I think that's a big part of why the panels were so crowded. But I also kind of feel like the storytelling was too much. I really felt that the further we got into the series, the stronger that my feelings on this were, that this story would have been so much better if it was just told from one of the characters' points of view. Whether it had been Light, or Ryuk, our Shinigami, or L, just pick one of those people and then tell the story from that point of view, instead of giving us the point of view from everybody in the story, whether it be L or Ryuk or another Shinigami or somebody else from the police force or one of the other characters that we meet. There was just too much information, and because we're basically told everything from every angle, that level of suspense, which is usually what keeps me interested in a story like this, was like out the window. I mean, there was no guessing at, what's going to happen next. You kind of already knew where this was going, what was going to happen next. At least I did. And whether or not that had an impact because I watched the anime, I don't know. Because had I not watched the anime, would I have figured out how this was going to end, in which way it was going to end? Like, in general? I don't know. And I can't remember what I thought when I watched the anime, because it had been that long. I think it's been over 10 years since we've watched it. But yeah, it just seemed like there was just too much. I feel like the story was wasted on the way that it was presented to us. They could have done so much with the story, whether it be releasing the first part of the story from Light's point of view, and then maybe switching to a different character point of view for the next part of the story. That could have worked as well. I just don't understand why they gave us this story this way. I feel like it's such a shame, because the story could have had so much more potential if they hadn't given us the story the way they did. And yeah, I did enjoy seeing how the end of the manga was, because it was different from the anime. The way it was presented was different, not that the ending was different, if that makes sense. But yeah, I'm glad that I finally finished this series. It's another finished series for me. I'm glad I finally read it, because this has been one that I was interested in reading for a while since we had watched the anime. But I don't know that I'd ever read this again. We may watch it. I know my daughter has great interest in watching it subbed, because when we watched it dubbed. But there are some voice actors, seiyus, that she's interested in that do voice characters in this anime, and so we may watch it again, if not the whole thing, maybe a little bit. But yeah, I'm glad I read through this finally, but it was kind of a disappointment. So I ended up giving this series on a whole a 3.5, which basically means I'd recommend it, but I wouldn't reread it. I do own it, obviously, so I don't know. I'm a bit disappointed. So then we'll just continue on with Monochrome Manga Club things, because I think where I left off with you last week was I Want to Be a Wall. And so our other first in a series selection was Whisper Me a Love Song, Volume 1 by Eku Takashima. I did record a series first impressions video on this and I Want to Be a Wall, so that should already be up on my channel by the time you see this. But I really enjoyed this one. But again, for more of my thoughts on that, definitely check out my series first impressions video, which I'll link down in the description box below. The other series read we're doing is for Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon, so we read the third Eternal edition. This one's by Naoko Takeuchi, published by Kodansha, rated teen. This is that very popular magical girl series. This is where I don't really know a lot about what happens in the series. I know some of it. Like, I know one of the characters that is introduced. I know a little bit about her backstory. But pretty much, like, the whole good versus evil things that happen in this series on a whole, I don't know about, for the most part. I know little bits and pieces because I did watch the anime, or watch parts, when my daughter was doing her watch through, but I personally have only seen the first season completely. Other than that, it's just like when I decided to sit down on the couch with my daughter when she was reading it or watching it. So I did find this interesting. I'm enjoying the series more than I thought I was going to, but there are still things that bug me about, especially our main character, Usagi. She's just like oblivious, and I do not enjoy characters like that. And there are a lot of things where I'm like, I don't understand how you didn't put that together. Like, do you know what I mean? So that whole part of this I'm not enjoying, but I do enjoy seeing like the things that are going on with the other Sailor Scouts. Because, like, in this one, there's, like, a chess kind of tournament thing that goes on with one of the Sailor Scouts. And there's some other things. Trying not to be spoiling. But, yeah, we also get introduced to another Sailor Scout in here. One that I wasn't even aware of. So, that was interesting to me. But, yeah, enjoying this much more than I thought I was going to. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the next volume. I would probably give that volume a 3.5 or a 4. I don't know. For me, Sailor Moon, it just seems like something that everybody kind of knows about, and I'm not hooked to the point where I would say, okay, for sure I reread this in the future. But that's not to say I wouldn't. Because, you know, you can miss a lot of things when you read through on the first time. That's why rereading always, at least for me, I always catch something else, or I interpret something a different way, and so I think there might be rereadability, but I'm not sure. So that's why I'm saying a 3.5 or a 4. So that's everything we've read for the Monochrome Manga Club. I did finish a couple other things. One of those things being Witch by Iain Wright. This, I think I talked to you about last week, but it's the first book in the Cursed Scrolls mystery, or Cursed Manuscripts series. And the summary on Goodreads alludes to these cursed manuscripts and why they're cursed, why they were being protected. But this particular story has nothing to do with what the summary says on Goodreads. I still, at the end of this book, do not know what impact that whole cursed manuscripts thing has on the story that was told in Witch. So if I was to give you a summary of this book, it basically follows two teens who are best friends who get bullied by this group of kids from their school so badly that they don't report it, because to report it would have worse consequences for them. So one day, while running away from this group of bullies, they actually fall down a mountain and discover an old dilapidated farmhouse. Inside the farmhouse, there is a chained up woman, and all on the floor and the walls and everything, there are these symbols. And this woman is chained in a way where it's not your normal, person you'd see locked in chains, where it's the cuffs and then the chains are connected to the cuffs. These chains go directly through the bones in her body. So she's got chains through both of her wrists and chains through both of her ankles. And they are freaked out. They don't know what to do to help this woman, because obviously they can't unchain her. They don't know what's up with all of these symbols. So they go back into town, or finally find their way back anyway, and report finding this woman to the police. Well, when the police go to the location they specified, the woman is not there. Not only is the woman not there, the symbols and all of the stuff that they saw is also not there. So they don't understand what's going on, but now they're being doubted by the police and everybody's calling them a liar. And so the two friends head off back to the farmhouse to figure out what's going on. And basically the woman that's chained there is a witch. And that's where I'm going to leave off with the summary, because if I tell you anything more, it's going to give the entire story away. This book is less than 200 pages, I believe. I borrowed a copy off of Kindle Unlimited, and I also borrowed an audiobook copy of the book from Hoopla through my library. Yeah, this book only comes in at 195 pages. Like I said, this book has nothing to do with that whole cursed manuscript summary that you're given on Goodreads. And I truthfully found it entertaining enough to read through to the end. But I definitely wouldn't reread this one. I did not enjoy how the story ended. I also didn't like the fact that the author decided to throw in a random sex scene at the end that had basically nothing to do with the story. I don't feel like there was any point in having that in the story other than to put in a sex scene and extend the amount of pages of the book. Because it literally had nothing to do with what happened in the story. Without that whole sex scene, the story would have remained the same. Exactly what had happened after that to the end, it had no impact on that. So I don't know why it was in there. Plus, it was a sex scene written by a man. And I think we've all established now that I do not enjoy sex scenes written by men. They're just very, I don't know. I don't enjoy them. Crude? Would crude be the correct word to use? Maybe. I don't know. I just don't enjoy sex scenes written by men. I have found that out recently, within the last year or so, because I hadn't read sex scenes written by men before. All of the ones that I have read before have been written by women. And I guess that's just personal preference. I don't read a lot of books that have sex scenes to begin with. That being said, I'm going to talk about another one that has sex scenes coming up. But yeah, I didn't enjoy this book as much as I thought I was going to. I was totally expecting something that had to do with these cursed manuscripts and this summary that's written on Goodreads, because that really sounds interesting. Now, this book is the first book in a series. The second book has something to do with zombies. And so that summary on Goodreads also has the same exact summary as the summary for Witch. So I don't know what's going on with that. From what I've read of people's reviews, because I wasn't sure, I did read people's reviews. From what I read of the reviews of Zombie, this is a zombie story. And I don't think it has anything to do with the cursed manuscripts either. So I'm going to not read the second book in this series. I wasn't really impressed with this first one. And like I said, because it had nothing to do with those cursed manuscripts, I kind of lost interest. And with just the way this particular book was written, I'm not really interested in reading another book by this author. Now, if he decides to actually come out with a book that has to do with those cursed manuscripts and the summary that's written on Goodreads, I may read that, because that summary sounds interesting to me. But this book was not that, and it was just okay. So I think I ended up giving this one a 3. It may even be a 2.5. So that's that one. And then just last night I finished I'm Looking for Serious Love. This is a manga written by Shoko Rakuta, published by Tokyo Pop, rated mature. I was buddy reading this one with Bizarre Individual. I haven't yet had a chance to talk to him about it, but we are buddy reading this together. This story follows our character here on the bottom, who is a new college student. So he's about 18 years old. He's going to college away from where he lived, and he's living in this apartment building. And when he goes to live in the apartment by himself, right before he left home, his grandma kind of gives him a little tip about, being a polite neighbor. And so she tells him, you need to go and introduce yourself to your neighbor, give him this snack package. And so he decides to go ahead and do that. Well, the neighbor next door is what he assumes is a city slicker, like a city person. So what I forgot to mention is that our main character is actually from the country. So he is completely disenchanted now that his neighbor is a city person. And the encounter is one where they kind of get off on the wrong foot. Well, as our main character lives longer in the apartment, he starts having run-ins with his neighbor, and they get to know each other and eventually get into a kind of relationship with each other. And so that's pretty much what happens in this story. The summary on the back of this is kind of misleading because I don't feel like it's truthful. Other people who may have read this volume may disagree, but I don't think that this volume is about what the back or the summary of this manga actually says. This is basically just these two characters kind of getting to know each other and getting into a relationship, yes, but along the way there's always a bump in the road. There's a little bit of a jealousy trope in the middle, which I didn't care for and didn't really understand. Our main character seems like the type of character who just lets other people do whatever they want to him in a sexual nature, and I didn't enjoy that. One of the warnings on the back, because with Tokyo Pop you get the reasons why the age rating is given, and one of the things that it says is dubious consent, and I wouldn't say consent was dubious. I would say there was no consent. for me, it was very much no consent. And I didn't enjoy that. I feel like there were too many sex scenes in this volume. I think of all of the manga that I've read this month, this volume had the most sex scenes in it. And I don't understand why. I don't understand why. To me, this title doesn't even make any sense as to what I read. So I'm really curious to see what Bazaar thinks, because I think he might have a different opinion than me. It's been very interesting because a lot of the things he really loves I thought were okay. But again, I'm not one for contemporary romance stories, and this is where that lies. I mean, so yeah, I'm disappointed. The art style was nice. I will have to say the art style was nice. There's a little thing in here about a new friend he makes at the university at orientation and his grandmother. And I thought those scenes were really sweet. But I just did not enjoy the main story about how this guy and his neighbor get together and the things that they go through and all of the sex scenes. And yeah, so disappointing read. I gave it a 3. It might even be a 2.5. But yeah, I think Witch and I'm Looking for Serious Love are probably my 2 most lowest rated reads so far this month. But we do still have 5 more days to go. I doubt that I'm going to have anything else that's around there. So that'll bring me to what I'm currently reading. I started The Lost Hero, which is the first book in the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan. This is the whole reason why I wanted to read through Percy Jackson and the Olympians, was to get to this series. So I have not ever read any of the Heroes of Olympus series. And this particular book follows a character named Jason. And Jason, he kind of wakes up on a bus holding hands with a girl and has no idea how he got to the bus, who this girl is, or who any of the other people on this bus with him are. But they're basically part of a school program. So as Jason's trying to figure out like why he's on this bus, who these people are, who he is, they get attacked. And then it eventually comes to light that some of these kids are demigods, and so they get taken to Camp Half-Blood. And so that's pretty much where I'm at with this story. I will say that it's not as interesting for me as Percy Jackson yet. I think it's because there's a lot that we need to be introduced to and explained and things like that. Plus, there's something going on where Percy is missing. And I don't think that's a spoiler. I'm pretty sure that's on the summary of this book. So, yeah. I'm definitely interested in what's going on, but I'm like, I think 100 pages in. And things are still very questionable. Like, Jason doesn't know who he is. They're still trying to figure him out, who he belongs to, whose kid he is, and as well as some of the other kids that he came to camp with. So yeah, I'm still interested and I'm enjoying what I've read so far. I've listened to everything that I've read so far from the audiobook version, which I borrowed from my library, because for whatever reason, the audiobook is not available to purchase anywhere. Audible doesn't have it, and like the Barnes & Noble new audiobook subscription service, it's not available there. So I don't know what's up with that. I think the first 2 books in this series are not available on audiobook, but they are available for me to borrow from my library. So far so good. This narrator is not as good as Jesse Bernstein, who narrated the Percy Jackson books, but he's enjoyable enough that I'm enjoying listening to The Lost Hero. Now, I did see that the last 3 books in the Heroes of Olympus series is narrated by a different narrator, and I have heard that narrator is not as good. So I'm interested to see with my journey on this how that goes as well. But I'm enjoying The Lost Hero so far. I have started The Last Fallen Star, which is the first book in the Gifted Clans series by Gracie Kim. This is for my Rotating Decks TBR game. I'm about 65 pages in. This one is about a girl who's been adopted into another Korean family. That Korean family has magical abilities of healing, and their daughter is about the same age as our main character, and she's going through her coming of age ceremony where she will get her like conduit to be able to do the healing magic and do the coming of age ceremony and everything. And because our main character has been told that she's not magical, she's kind of feeling down in the dumps. She knows all of the spells and everything, but she's not been given the abilities. And so her sister comes up with a scheme to try to have our main character do the ceremony as well. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. It's like forbidden for normal humans, which is what our main character is. And so they're kind of doing something that goes against the rules of their community, or at least they're planning to do so where I'm at. So I'm interested to see how this goes. Obviously it's a series, so things have got to happen relatively soon, I think. There's either going to be some commotion about them doing the ceremony, they're going to get caught in what they're planning to do. Something's gotta come up. So we'll see about that. I am finding it interesting as well. And so I'm looking forward to reading more of that. So I do need to get to at least 100 pages for that one to pass for my TBR game. I don't think that's going to be a problem because, like I said, I do have 5 more days. Speaking of my TBR game, I'm supposed to have read 2 other books before the end of the month, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to do so. So my plan for this week is to try to get 100 pages of The Last Fallen Star, 100 pages of Black Blood by Christopher Pike. This I not only have to read for my TBR game, but I have to also read it for my priority reads list of this year. So I do really, really want to get that one read. And then I have to read 100 pages of Diary of the Damned by Michelle Muto, which is the second book in the Haunting season duology. So we'll see. I'm still not feeling the reading too much, and I do have one more buddy read planned with Bizarre Individual before the end of the month, so we'll see if I get that done as well. But yeah, that's everything that I have read so far. Now let's get into some knitting. So I have finished another pair of socks. So these are socks that I have done for my mom. This is the Jemima sock pattern by Kate Jones of the Bakery Bears podcast. I am a Bakery Bears patron, so I do purchase a lot of Kay's patterns also, as well as receive some free because of my patron tier and the Christmas giveaways and things like that. So this is just a nice textured pattern. The yarn is Mally Socks Ferner Wall, so I have it in the bag here. Oh man, and I believe it's a DK yarn because it is very plump, but I pretty much just used it as fingering weight. So this is a 64 stitch sock, 2x2 rib, 15 rows, and then I did the Jemima pattern, square heel turn, and the umbrella toe, which is also Kate Jones's umbrella toe pattern. And so, yeah, I had one sock and some done. the last time I showed it to you. So now I have 2 complete socks. So my mom will get these for her Christmas sock stash. And yes, so I thought I was going to have enough yarn to do socks for my daughter, but I don't think that's the case. So this is basically all I have left. I haven't even weighed it yet. What I'm probably going to do is do her a pair of socks where just from the cuff to the heel is in this yarn, and then do from the heel to the foot in a different color. Because really, when you're out and about, you're only going to see what's outside of the shoe, right? So I think that's going to be the plan. I think I have a couple rows of ribbing on an Advent sock from last year's Bakery Bears patron knit along, but I don't know that I want to do that one because that's another like sampler type sock where each day was a different like stitch pattern. So it's like 12 different stitch patterns along the sock. I don't know that I want to do that because they're a bunch of lace panels and lace takes a lot of concentration. I do have a pair of Moonstruck socks on the go from K. Jones as well. That was another patron only summer knit along that was done last month or so. That's also lace, so that takes concentration. And because I've been really into watching Korean and Japanese dramas lately, I don't have the ability to do lace while I watch subtitles. I've kind of lost that ability since I stopped watching as many Korean dramas and Japanese dramas. So until I get back to a place where I'm feeling more comfortable, not having to concentrate on the television so much and just picking up the audio cues, I don't think I'm going to be able to work on those Moonstruck socks. So I am probably going to have to start a new pair of socks. So whether that be the Christmas socks for my daughter or the independent socks from the leftover yarn of the socks that I showed you last week, I am not sure yet, but I am feeling the itch to knit more than I did before. So I do think that I will be casting on something else soon, if not re-picking up one of the 2 tops that I have on the go right now. So that's where I'm at with my knitting. Speaking of the dramas, we did finish our rewatch of the Korean adaptation Boys Over Flowers. Really, really enjoyed that. It's definitely a classic, I would say, and one that I have rewatched before and will probably rewatch multiple times in the future. The music is just so nostalgic for me. And so, yeah, really enjoyed that. And then we jumped right into Hanakimi, the 2009 version. I believe it's 2009. We really enjoyed that one the first time we watched it. I'm really enjoying our rewatch. I think we're 6 episodes into 12. And so it's been a fun ride. That's another series that I want to read the manga for that I haven't yet read that. So I'm definitely looking forward to doing that. I will say that after watching The Boys Over Flowers, I want to read the manga pretty badly. So I may be doing that sometime in July as well. It's available on the Shonen Jump app. If you didn't know, that's definitely the cheapest way to be able to read it unless your library has all of the 37 volumes. I think it's 37. It's a pretty long one. But yeah, I'm definitely more inspired to knit. I've been enjoying watching my Asian dramas again. It's just the reading just needs to come back. I mean, my knitting is not where it was before, I would say last year, but it's getting there. I'm wanting to knit, which is a much different feeling than I've been feeling the last year or so. So that's great. I just need to get my want of reading back. So, yeah, that's pretty much everything that happened since I talked to you last. I know I said I was going to take you to the manga club meeting. Truth is, I forgot my camera at home. I forgot it at home, so I didn't take you along. I'll try to remember to do that the next time. The manga club meeting went great. Manga shopping went great. And other than that, it's just been very hot. It's going to hit the hundreds tomorrow. I'm not enjoying it, but I'm surviving. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to leave you here for this week's entry. Let me know down in the comments below if you've watched any good TV shows or movies, if you've done any crafting, or what your favorite or least favorite read was for this week. I'd love to know that. Also, if you have a Korean or Japanese drama recommendation, I'd love to know. Particularly one that's available on Netflix or Viki or Kokowa, because I have access to all three of those. We've been watching The Boys Over Flowers and Hanakimi from Viki. Though I do know Boys Over Flowers is also available on Netflix. But like I said, let me know down in the comments below what your best or worst book of the week was, if you've got any recommendations for Asian dramas, or if you watched anything fun and exciting or crafted on anything interesting this week. I'd love to know. If nothing else, you would just like to let me know that you were here. If you could leave me a pink heart emoji down in the comments below, that would be greatly appreciated and would really help me out. And that will do it for me today. So I hope you're all doing great. I hope you're all safe and healthy. And until next time, take care and smile always. Bye.